Morning, I'm Chef Italski and I am here to show you how to make Italian bread. This is the very first recipe that you're going to make when you hit campus in the next week or two, depending on what day you're coming in. I have all my mise en place to make two loaves of Italian bread. I have my flour scaled out, I have salt and yeast, I have water, I have malt syrup, which is provides some enzymes for yeast activity. And in this bowl, I have what's called the pouliche. And I think you can see it's very bubbly and very active. This is called a pre-ferment or a starter. And I need to scale out 341 grams of that starter. So if you come around, you'll be able to see these are the scales that we're using at school. They're called digital scales. And we hit the red button and it turns it on. And you'll notice that the default for this scale is set at grams, which is metrics, and that's what we're going to be using. We have to weigh in something, so I put the bowl on top, and the bowl has weight. Well, we need to get rid of that weight. To do that, I hit this button on the bottom right. It's called the tare button, T-A-R-E. I hit that and it brings it to 0. So what happens is it holds the weight of the bowl in its little pea brain and its little memory. When I put the bowl back down, it zeroes it out. Now I believe, I have to check one more time, I need 341 grams of this, and there is no easy way to scale this. It's kind of, look, stretchy and gooey. So I'm just going to use my fingers, which I've washed very thoroughly before I started. And we're going to be washing our hands a lot. I'm just going to pop this into, you said 341, right? There's 314, 327. We should be getting close. More grams. There we go, 341. So I'm going to take it off the scale, turn the scale off, move it off to the side, and my next step will be to add the water, which I've already scaled out. So I'm adding the water to the starter. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of malt syrup. Now this is very thick and very viscous. Look. It doesn't even want to come out. So I'm going to use my impeccably clean hands to get it out. And I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to use my hands to just kind of break this pouliche up. I got out of bed last night in the middle of the night to make it because I forgot. But it's equal weights of bread flour, winter wheat flour, and water, and then the tiniest amount of yeast, and it's allowed to pre-ferment for a good 8 to 12 hours. So there we go, we're mixed. I got the malt syrup mixed in, kind of looks like a milky sort of mess. Here's my flour. I'm going to take the instant dry yeast, add it to the flour, and give it just a little mix with my fingers. The salt I'm going to put right in the water, and it could go in the flour easily enough. This is going in to the whole batch. I'm going to move all my little containers out of the way. And then I am going to just start making a little centrifuge in the center by stirring it with my hands and pulling the flour in from the outside, little by little. And the reason we make this by hand the first time is because I think it's important that you get to actually feel the dough and feel the process. So as it starts to get tighter, you'll notice I go around the perimeter of the bowl and push it into the center. And that's what I'm doing here. Once I get most of the flour bits picked up, I am going to turn this out onto this wooden board. Now I could have done it directly on my counter, but the board works equally as well. And I think I might be making some pasta later. All right, so I'm going to turn it out, and get all this goodness out of the bowl. Scrape this off my hands. And then I'm going to use this tool. It's called a bowl scraper. It's not a spatula, but it's a bowl scraper, and it's on this side. And I'm going to scrape out all the dry bits that are in the bottom of the bowl. And you'll find these in the black box at school, so I know they're not in your knife kits, but we do have them for you to use. So now this tool you're going to use to flip and press, and initially this is the hand kneading part that we get started with. And the dough initially, when you first hit the counter, is definitely a little bit sticky, but you kind of flip forward and push until it kind of stretches out. And honestly, I'm going to get a little bit of bench flour because this is a little stickier than I'd like. So one of the things about bread dough and flour and the amount of water you use is that the temperature and the amount of moisture in the flour itself will make a difference. So I'm going to just add a tiny little bit, just so it doesn't stick quite as much. Okay, there we go. Push, fold, push, fold, push. And this is the kneading process. Notice just that little bit of flour was enough to prevent this from sticking. Don't squeeze it with your hands so dough is squishing out your fingers. You flip with your fingers, fold it over, and push. Fold, push, fold, and push. As it elongates, you then give it a quarter turn and you repeat the process. This is the kneading process. I will continue this for maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 minutes. I will come back and show you what the finished dough looks like. Round it out just to keep it nice and smooth, and there you have a well-kneaded batch of dough. This little ball of dough is going to make 2 loaves of Italian bread. So I have a pre-greased bowl. Notice there's very little fat in it. I put about a drop of olive oil, like a half a teaspoon, just a little bit. Spread it around. I'm going to put the ball of dough in the bowl. I'm going to take a little piece of plastic wrap, lay it over the top. Now, if we were at school, you would write your name on the top with that marker that you're going to have in your jacket pocket at all times. And this would go in the proof box. Well, I'm at home, it's a rainy day, I am in no rush, so I'm simply going to leave this here until it doubles in bulk. So we have scaled our ingredients, we have mixed our dough, and now we are fermenting. That's step 3 in the 12 steps of yeast dough production. I'll be back with you when this is ready. Thanks. Okay, I'm back with you, and our dough has doubled in bulk, which is the term we use to indicate that the dough is ready. So I'm going to remove the plastic wrap, and I'm going to show you how we can tell for sure. I'm going to take 2 fingers and I'm going to press them into the center of the dough, and if it springs back immediately, the dough is not ready. If the indentations stay, that means the dough is ready to proceed with the next step, which is dividing. We're going to take this whole piece of dough, weigh it, and divide by 2 to create 2 equal pieces. All right, to divide it, I have set my scale up, placed the empty bowl on top of the scale and tared it out so that it's reading 0. I have placed the piece of dough on the board. I am going to take a bench cutter or a bench scraper, which is a tool that looks like that, and I am going to weigh the whole piece of dough and then divide it into 2 equal pieces. And to pre-shape this particular piece of dough and this piece of dough for the Italian loaf shape, we are going to round it. That's what we're calling it. So we're taking the dough and we're going to fold it into the center, and we're going all the way around, and we're just kind of folding it into the middle on the bottom, And then we're going to turn it over, and you can see the top is rather smooth. And then you're going to take your hands and kind of curve them around the piece of dough. And you can hear bubbles popping, and you can see bubbles in the dough. And that seals that piece of dough up really well. It makes a nice tight seam on the bottom. Some people like to use a bench scraper. This is now what we call benching. So I'm going to take this loaf of benched dough, flip it over smooth side down, and I'm going to shape it into the traditional football shape, which is what most Italian bread is. I'm not using a lot of flour because flour causes a row and makes your dough slip, but I am basically taking 1/3 of the dough, folding it over, and pinching it with my fingers. I call it a frown, so it's kind of frown down. Use your fingertips and the side of your hand to seal that seam really well. Take the piece of dough and roll it over 1/3 of the way again, and repeat. Press with your thumbs, go back, give it another karate chop. If you're finding that your frown isn't sad enough, you can always fold the ends in a little bit, and then finally you fold it over on itself so both seams meet, and then again with your thumbs you press to make sure that it's well sealed. I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to put it up on the seam, and using my thumbs and making this spade shape, I'm going to take my thumbs and push on the seam. And when I do, you can see the membrane on the top smoothing out and the sides beginning to taper in what should be that traditional football shape. And that's how you shape a loaf of Italian bread. You can watch this video several times until you get it. It takes a little bit of practice. We are going to set it off to the side. At school, we're going to put it on what's called a breadboard. We're going to line the breadboard with a piece of parchment, dust it with some cornmeal flour mixture, and put it in the proof box. Here, I'm just going to leave it on the board and cover it with a towel. I'll be back with you when these are ready to go in the oven. So I'm back with you, and the loaves have been proofing for a second time for about 35 minutes, and they are proofed quite perfectly. They've puffed up to about 1.5 times their original volume, which is what we're looking for. I've prepared a wooden peel because I'm actually going to bring these loaves outside, and I'm cooking them in a wood-fired oven. However, you could cook them in a pan in your home oven. At school, we would cook them on the deck of our quote-unquote deck ovens. Or we could also put them in a pan and cook them in the deck oven. But we are going to put these in a wood-fired oven, and I'll explain all about the wood-fired oven at a later date. I am going to score these loaves with a razor blade, which is called a lame, and then I'm going to get them ready to go in the oven. I have the lame, and I'm going to make the traditional, what I call a smile in this loaf. So I start at the top using just the bottom corner of the lame, and I'm going to slice right around fairly deep. It's a good 1/4 inch until I've created a smile. I'm going to do the same for this one, and I am going to do the same for that one. And when you're doing that, if you turn your wrist, you should get a nice, what they call an ear. All right, these two are going in a wood-fired oven, so I'm sneaking them over here, and I'm sliding them in, and I'm going to shake them off the peel. I'm going to get the last one and get this one in as well. This oven is about 500 degrees. And here is our finished Italian bread. It has that perfect shape that we look for, the football shape, and this beautiful, what they call ear. And both of these are lovely. They came out of the wood-fired oven. I pulled them out with a peel, threw them on the cooling rack because it's starting to rain. All right, Italian bread 101.